Welcome back to First and 10. I am your host, Josh Rodriguez, with our guest, Joe Sprague. Today, we're going to be covering the games of the week. We have Iowa State, West Virginia, BYU, Arizona, Kansas State, Colorado, Alabama, and South Carolina, or versus South Carolina, I should say. Georgia's hosting Mississippi State. Boy, I'm really screwing that up. Ole Miss at LSU, Texas versus Oklahoma, Penn State at USC, and the headliner, Oregon hosting Ohio State. So we got a lot of games to get to, so we will jump right in. All right, let's go to game one. First of all, Joe, how are you today? I should ask.
I'm good, man. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I've had this week marked on the calendar for a long time, weeks before the season even started, so can't believe it's finally here.
Good. I think it's a pretty cool slate of games. I mean, to keep up, though, with last week's games is going to be a tough act to follow. So,
yeah, wildest weeks I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we could get that. So let's start in the Big 12 with Iowa State at West Virginia. You want to give me some thoughts on that one? You want to start here?
Yeah, sure. The Big 12 has been such a fun conference to follow because, so many teams have that I wasn't, of course, I thought it was going to be Utah, Arizona, K-State, and not that those teams are out of it by no means, but to see like Iowa State, emerge from the pack undefeated so far, I wasn't really factoring that in, and they looked decent doing it too. They beat a great Iowa defense and close game, but they were able to pull it out, and the Baylor, and so they just slowly kind of just methodically been winning these football games. Nothing crazy. I mean, their offense is average, I would say. The 46th rushing offense and the 56th passing offense, but their defense has been doing it. Matt Campbell's defense has been turning up. He got the 13th defense, only allowing 271 yards a game, and he's been real impressive because just and sometimes I always feel like I think we talked about this a few weeks ago that Iowa State, they kind of they always seem to do well real early in the season, and this is about the time where they get tested, and we see if they lose these type of games. West Virginia, on the other hand, they had that tough first game with Penn State, and they tried to hang with them for that first quarter. It did an okay job, but that Penn State's just another animal right now, and so that that kind of ended the way we thought it would. But they beat a good Kansas team, and Oklahoma State as well. That was a team that was kind of a front runner at one point. And they beat them, and they got a really great rushing offense, 13th in the country. And but the thing is, their defense, not so hot, and so that's what's kind of, I think, led them to lose a couple games. And 81st, allowing 373 yards. I think that Matt Campbell is probably going to get it done this week, and I see Iowa State winning this one 30-24.
Wow. Okay. All right. You got Iowa State covering. The Cyclones are coming to Morgantown. That's the first time since 21, and they're the 11th ranked team in the country. That the win over Baylor, not bad, right? I mean, what were your, I thought that's a pretty good win, maybe. I think that they're going to be hungry to avenge that Penn State. You mentioned that Penn State game. I think that they're going to be wanting to show the home crowd, like, we can play with a good team, because Iowa State is a good team. They come in, right? It's Matt Campbell, the defense, that 3-3-5 base, and they'll go into a 4-2-5 and whatnot. But it's really this, the spread beater is what this is obviously evolved from. But they've done it really well at Iowa State. They get their kind of athletes, the guys that play hard on defense, assignment football. They tackle really well. But you're right. They always, it's like sometime around that, like mid-October, late October, like I don't know exactly what it is either. If maybe their schedule gets harder, they put their schedule, towards the end, or what it is, but they always seem to kind of drop one. And I wonder if this one's got to be it, because I think West Virginia is a pretty good football team. They've got, obviously, you mentioned it, their defense is really really where they struggle, right? And also, like, they don't throw the ball really well. They don't pass the ball all that well. They are really dedicated to the run game, and so if they're able to run the football successfully, though, how I feel about running the football, that's always an gives you an opportunity to win. Usually that needs to come with a good defense, because if you get behind early, as Penn State started to pull away, it's like you can't. You're not really built for that. You're not really built for that. And so Iowa State's 47th rushing the ball. So this was and I thought Rocco Beck in their last game was 16 to 25 for 277, and they ran for over 200 yards. And so I'm just that was with that. Sorry, they ran for over 200 yards. And so if they can do that, if Iowa State could do that against West Virginia, I think they're going to have a lot of success. And I wavered back and forth on this game when we were making the pick because I can just see it kind of going. But I was really like, okay. But I think, Iowa State has a clear advantage on paper in the turnover margin. So the turnover margin, I look at those really like closely in tight games. You look at special teams as well, but West Virginia, though, running the football might be the difference. And so I'm going to put West Virginia to cover and win outright.
Oh, nice.
So, 27-24. So
okay, yeah. The one thing that gave me a little bit of pause too when I was picking Iowa State, I'm just a huge Matt Campbell fan as well, and I want to see him get over this hump. I want to see him, get over these like mid-season inexplicable loss or something. But I mean, this would, like I said, like you were saying, West Virginia is a good team. Rocco, though, man, he's thrown. I saw he's thrown 9 interceptions, so he's got to take care of the football and make better decisions. That's kind of rough. It's kind of funny too that these are one of the least penalized teams in college football. You got Iowa State with only 4th in country and with fewest penalties, and then West Virginia is 2nd in the country with only like just under 4 at 3.6. So the refs might be able to take the day off in this one, and we can just watch these two teams play football.
Yep. I mean, we'll like that. Watch them have like 20 penalties each.
Yeah. All right. Just jinx them.
All right. Moving on. The BYU, the number 14 BYU, 5-point home favorite versus Arizona. BYU is a surprise team. I think they're a surprise to everybody in the country. Even I think to BYU fans, I don't know anybody that I heard in the preseason say BYU was going to go 5-0 to start the season. I don't think I heard that from anybody. I mean, at all. I think they were picked to finish 13th in the Big 12, which is 16 teams in the Big 12. Yeah, and they come in ranked number 14, and Arizona's fresh off a really kind of head scratching and humbling loss to Texas Tech is the way I would put that. That game was really. I mean, it was just Arizona's to really lose, and I felt like Texas Tech was dropping 8 on a lot of downs. They obviously did their homework, and it was really messing Fifita up, and then he'd have to scramble, try to make a play, and they just did a good job of containing him, knowing what he was going to do. And they had that one drive that was in particular. They had that the 3rd down where they stopped Fifita on a scramble, which it looked like he was easily going to get it. And they stopped on the scramble, then they stopped him on the 4th down play, the very next, like a 4th and 1. And I felt like that was a little bit of a microcosm for that game, was just Texas Tech made plays when they had to. And so I'm wondering what Arizona team we're going to actually see, this week is really, because I can't figure Arizona out. Like, I really can't. Like, they go to Utah and they just physically dominate those guys, and then they come back and lose that game to Texas Tech. So I don't really know what to make of them. BYU, though, bye week, feeling fresh at home. Provo's that's a tough place to play. This is a large assignment for BYU. Green Hill's defense, though, big story there, right? I mean, K-State's really good. I mean, I think K-State. I think Avery Johnson is really good. They made him look like a high school quarterback. I mean, what they did to him, and that defense, they just wreak havoc all over. And so, that they've got Beatty and Harrison Taggart, and they get a lot of sacks, they get a lot of pressures, they get a lot of tackles for losses, and they make the other teams make mistakes. And so, this one is kind of very hard for me to call. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure that BYU has the horses on offense to exploit the Arizona secondary. The one thing I'm wondering about a little bit. They're pretty evenly matched. The turnover margin favors BYU heavily, and that usually, as I said, goes a long ways in home games, and you get the home crowd. BYU stingy against the pass. Arizona, obviously, T-Mac can get his, but sometimes they're not getting other receivers involved, and so they become a little bit one-dimensional at pass game. I think BYU and Provo just I like them. I think they're playing a really good football, and I want to see them. I want to see them win this game. I want to see them act, because this is where BYU would lose the game right here. They'd have this hot start, and then they would lose to to a team that you're like, you've beaten better teams than this, And so I'm gonna take BYU 28-24, but that means Arizona covers, BYU wins, but BYU in 2020.
Yeah, that's I was so surprised by that BYU defense you had mentioned. I mean, 20th in the country in total defense, and they're keeping teams out of the end zone with only giving up just under 16 points a game at 15.8, and so it's like I guess like they're able to they're winning with their defense, because the offense, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I mean, they got the 78th and but the defense is just stepping up to the plate and keep teams out of the end zone and keeping them in these games, and it's like when I didn't think they were going to beat Baylor, then they beat Baylor, and I was like, well, maybe Baylor's not what we thought it were. And then, that Kansas State win, that just I didn't see that one coming, like you said, whatsoever. That was an impressive win right there. And in Arizona, it's like every time I get back on board with them, the Texas Tech thing happens, or that they end up losing a game that I always picked them to win. But obviously T-Mac, he's one of the best wide receivers in the country, but they just, there's just some games where teams are able to take him out of their game plan, and or maybe they do, like you said, get so too one-dimensional, and he just focuses on him so much that he just that's all he sees out there. But yeah, I mean, I like BYU in this one myself. A little bit of bigger margin of victory for me, but I think they're going to win 27-20.
Yeah, on that note too, T-Mac, I'm sure he's going to be hungry to get back out on the field with that late fumble that cost them. I mean, that was the ball game, that late fumble. I mean, they were going down, that again, like timely. This is what I was talking about. Timely. It was just the guy punched the ball out perfectly, and then they end up Texas Tech ends up winning the game. But and to your point about their offense, Jake Retzlaff, he's a game manager that can kind of hurt you with their feet, but he's not. I mean, so Arizona. I mean, it kind of a little bit like how you would play, like we were talking about, like with the Michigan team, or somebody, quarterback that can hurt you with his feet, but not really a polished thrower. Arizona can man up and play zero, and play one, and throw a bunch of different pressures at you and make you uncomfortable. So you got to watch out. I'm going to be definitely watching out to see how they defend him, because they did a really good job. That's the same type of team that really Utah was inept offensively when they played him, because Rising's not in. And I mean, it's just different. Isaac Wilson's a good quarterback, but like he's young, he's young. And so they just kind of pinned their ears back and came after him and really wreaked havoc. And so if they do pull the upset, that's the type of result I would expect, a similar one to like a Utah, because of that. It's going to play out where their defense is just all over them and making BYU's offense, inoperable. So that's the way I would see if it goes the other way. But I think they're going to be enough. I'm hoping, and I really want to see them get that win. All right, Kansas State, number 18, Kansas State, 4-point road dog at Colorado. K-State's 52nd in scoring offense. That's 31.4 points a game. 37th in scoring defense, 19.6 points allowed per game. On average, they're about 8.4 more points. The Wildcats are per game this season, but they've got, so the Buffaloes are at, what do I have here? Sorry, my notes are all screwed up here. Colorado, that is, they're allowing 23 points a game. So K-State scores 31.4. Colorado gives up 23. But the difference is, here's the difference, though, is on the road, though, they have not been very good. Kansas State only scores 21.5 on the road. And part of that is that BYU game. That BYU game is where they scored 9 points, right? Like they haven't been great on the road. They played, I think, Tulane on the road as well. And, they're not, Kansas State's not nearly as good on the road. And then part of that makes me think that, okay, so maybe Avery Johnson's that kid we talked about that's really good at home, and then he gets on the road and things aren't, and he's paying attention maybe to the unimportant clues, I guess, as our sports psychologist friends would say, the non-relevant clues of the crowd noise and everything else. And so I think we're gonna learn a lot about Kansas State this week, because if they go into Boulder and they handle business, I think Boulder's a pretty good win. I would not have said that a year ago. I probably wouldn't even said that at the beginning of the year. And then something with that Baylor, the magic that happened at Baylor, and those guys get playing with a lot of confidence. Those kids play with a lot of swag anyways, but then you give them a reason to have that swag, because they've got obviously, Travis Hunter, they've got Shedeur Sanders, they've got Jimmy Horn. These guys are as flashy and as athletic as you can get, and emotional players as well. And so I'm going to be really interested to watch that kind of the battle unfold. If those guys Colorado gets rolling early and Kansas State can't punch back, you got to watch out, is the way. That's kind of what I'm looking at on that one. The other thing is Avery Johnson, like I said, and I've been on him a little bit, like I think he's going to be really good. Passer rating is 114 when he's clean. Under pressure, 29. And he's got a 4.55 turnover worthy play percentage, which is, that's not good. So, I think Shedeur Sanders, the other thing is his numbers impressed me. So his passer rating is 112, under pressure is 109. He's better under pressure because he's dealt with it for 2 years, year and a half now at this level, like constantly under duress. And it's like it's just expected almost, that he's going to do something. And so I think he's really easy to handle. He handles that very easily. And he's also a 6% big time throw percentage. There's a reason why there's a lot of hype behind Shedeur Sanders, because he's really good. Travis Hunter, I think he's he's a generationally good talent, two-way player that we haven't seen in a long time. So, all that being said, you can probably tell the way that I'm leaning. I think K-State, they put together a good road performance, but I think they'll keep it close. But as I went through this, I tried to pick K-State and I just couldn't. I couldn't see it for some reason. I just couldn't see it, and that's because I've just watched them now a couple times, on the road, and it's not the same. They're not the same team as they are when they're at home. That's not the same team that beat Arizona 31-7 or whatever, right?
Right.
So I've got Colorado to win outright 31-28.
Yeah, and it's like, this is a kind of a funny game, and because everything that one team's good at, the other team is like the opposite, not good at. For instance, Kansas State, they're 100th in pass defense, and we know that that's all Colorado. Really, they don't run the ball well at all. And you were speaking about Shedeur being under pressure. That offensive line does not pass block very well because he's always under pressure, and they don't run block very well either because they can't run on the other hand, Colorado can't run the ball very well. They're 125th in the country in rushing the ball. But I'm wondering if, and then with all you said about Avery Johnson and getting distracted on the road, Boulder is going to be a huge distraction. Coach Fry has, all the celebrities out there, the music's player, and it's a show, that's for sure. And they have quite the atmosphere out there. But I'm wondering if maybe, if Kansas State, with their rush offense, they have a great rush offense. They're able to run the ball. Maybe they can, limit the possessions. And I'm sure that's what all teams have tried to do when they play in Colorado. North Dakota State did a great job with that, and I thought they were going to, pull that one out. But Shedeur worked his magic, and they were able, or Colorado was able to win that one. I'm going to go with the offensive line on this one, and I think that if Arizona could just keep the game plan simple, not ask Avery to do so much or too much, I should say, and just and run that offense, they should have the advantage. On the defensive line, because I don't think that Colorado's offensive line is very good as far as rushing the passer or blocking for Shedeur, and I don't even think they need to worry about Colorado's rush offense. So I'm thinking if they can control the ball, control time of possession, and limit Colorado's opportunities on offense, I think they might be able to pull this one out. The problem is just Colorado has two very good possible first round NFL picks on their roster in Shedeur and Travis. And I was kind of, but these first three games have been kind of tough to pick, but I did find a reason to pick K-State, and I have them winning this one 35-30.
35-30 K-State. All right. That's it. There you go. So you got them covering.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. K-State to cover. Okay. Awesome. I could see that, and I was with you a little bit on them controlling clock and running the ball because Avery Johnson's really good at running the ball too. But I keep coming back to like turnovers and just I don't know, man. Like, that's a tough one to call. But the key, you know what, these games for the Big 12, it's kind of like the whole conference. It's impossible to read on that conference right now. And as you mentioned at the very beginning, it's a very fun conference to watch. It's kind of taken the place of the Pac-12, like I said, like before. It's really, really entertaining. There's not like a really big standout team, even though Pac-12 kind of had some standout teams. There's not really that one. Everybody's kind of trying to figure out who's, they're all juxtaposing, this year. So it's going to be really interesting and fun to watch.
Yeah, as soon as one team pulls away, the other, like the next week, another one jumps ahead of them. Like you said, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if West Virginia and BYU win this week, that's just like, what? What do you this conference? What do you actually do here? So be really interesting. Okay, let's move on to the SEC. We've got Georgia versus Mississippi State, and the only reason I put this one in here, we don't need to talk too long about this one because it's like we all know, everybody knows, anybody with a pulse knows who's going to win this game.
Did you say that about Vandy last week?
Well, I don't.
It can't happen 2 weeks in a row, right?
I'm glad we didn't talk about that because it would have been great. But so I just wanted to mention this because this is the warm-up game for them. We're going to talk about Texas later. So Georgia, in my opinion, they've got essentially this is like a week off game for them. And I think they're just going to absolutely steamroll these guys, and they're going to have the starters in right after halftime, probably the third quarter. I mean, the backups will be in, the starters will be out. And so they're 33.5 points, and I kind of don't think that's enough on that one. So what about you? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Mississippi State, they're just not good football. They're not a good football team right now, and they really haven't been all year. But in Georgia, Georgia is a team that I don't really understand. The numbers don't look as Georgia as if you will, as Georgia-ish as they have in the last couple of years. And I understand they've lost a lot of superstars and things like that. And in theory, they in recruiting that we all follow and stuff like that, they should just be able to reload. And for the most part, they do. But I'm looking at these numbers. I'm like, man, the 95th ranked rushing offense, the 54th in total offense. But then I'm looking at their schedule, and I mean, Georgia's played a tough schedule up to this point. I mean, a really tough schedule with, Clemson and Kentucky and, Auburn, I know that, but in Alabama, I mean, so I'm kind of like, I really, you can't read too much into those numbers, I don't think, up to this point, and the schedule doesn't get any better in the SEC. It's brutal right now for Georgia and a lot of those teams. They got some of those teams got a tough draw this year. But yeah, I mean, I think Georgia's gonna, get right this week on this one is a prep for next week's game. And yeah, I mean, I see them winning this one 45-10.
Oh yeah, I probably should have put a score prediction on there. So I didn't put one on there. I just said they would cover, and that's really easy. I'm gonna go with probably like 55. I think you're gonna see them have an offensive breakthrough, and their numbers are gonna get better. And as you like to say, water's gonna find its level, and I think the level for them is higher, based on the competition that they played early and what they're going to play. But, obviously Texas is no slouch on defense. They're going to have their hands full next week, but I expect a better performance than what they did against Alabama. But we'll get to that. That's for next week. That's a headliner for next week.
Right.
So let's say 55-10, whatever.
Yeah.
57, something like that. All right. So we'll move on to Alabama versus South Carolina. All right. Shocking loss to Vandy. I saw this really great breakdown of it on the third downs, and I don't know if you had a chance to see that. I can't remember the guy's name, but he does this. He does the film breakdown of it, and he basically showed that I think his line was that they got hunted on third down, and they were in cover one robber, and they were just running basically every third down play. Vandy was just running like rub routes. They were running like just man beaters essentially.
Yeah,
and so. Yeah, and it was really interesting to watch because he pulled up, a bunch of the clips, and he was dead on. And so they had an absolute game plan there. Obviously, Alabama probably knows that now. And so this week, I would assume they're going to change some things up. Now the offense is just gonna continue to hum. That even that pick six last week. I mean, Jalen Milroe throws a pick six, but it's really a batted ball. It was like more like just a PBU. That it was one of those days where that happens. It goes against you, and everything that day kind of went against them. So I think at this point in the season, we know who both of these teams are, and I think Alabama, incredible ceiling. But the floor, they showed you what the floor was. Not that Vandy's bad or anything like that, but that just goes to show you that you have to show up every week. You got to show up every week, and you can't take anything like that for granted. Now, Kalen DeBoer, I said it on the last show. He has had his teams that, like last year's Washington team, you could watch them; they just would underperform sometimes, especially after a big game. Like I mentioned that they played Oregon. They beat Oregon. It was the huge game. Next week, they had Arizona State. And it took a Jabbar Muhammad pick six in the fourth quarter for them to win that game. And so he played with fire several times last year. They were in games they should have never been. And I feel like, is Alabama taking on that a little bit? But maybe he found out that the SEC is not the Pac-12, and you can't do that, right? There's just too good of teams down there, that'll eat you up if you take a week off. South Carolina could be in that realm of a team. I just don't think they're very good on offense. I have a real hard time. I have a real hard time because they can't throw the ball vertically. If you can't throw the ball vertically, you're just not. Ole Miss, really took these guys to task last week, and I expect kind of a similar. I'm expecting a similar showing, but and even more lopsided on the offense. I think Bama's going to get loose. I think they're pissed. I think they want to put on a show, and I think they're probably extremely locked in this week. So I got them to cover 45-10.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I totally was buying all the stock in South Carolina last week, and I picked them to upset Ole Miss. That wasn't why I didn't make it to the reaction show. I wasn't ducking you because that was such a terrible pick.
We're going to talk about that. I did go 5. I wanted to own that one real quick. Yeah, just so you know, I did go 5-2.
No, I know you killed it. I wanted to make sure that we didn't mention that because that was a hell of a week.
We know that's why you didn't show
up. I thought South Carolina's defense was a little bit better than what I guess they were. Sellers, I guess I put too much stock or too much credence into that LSU game as well too, because I thought they played LSU very tough. I know they lost that one, but I thought it was a great game, and I don't know. I just expect a little bit more out of them, but then I should have maybe dug into the numbers a little bit better than what I did. They cannot throw the ball at all. 110th. Gosh, that's just. You can't, not in the SEC, the Big Ten. We talk about with Michigan on the other, kind of the same way, but you cannot be one dimensional against in these conferences. That's for damn sure. And like you were saying, mentioned in the Alabama Vandy game, Milroe didn't play bad at all. he didn't play bad. Just Vandy's quarterback was making those incredible back shoulder throws, and they kind of went after the linebackers a little bit, and like you said, with rub routes and whatnot. And they just it never felt like the game was out of hand. I kind of just was like, oh well, it's second quarter. Oh well, third quarter they'll come. And then until about 3 minutes left, I didn't really believe it was going to happen. But kudos to Vanderbilt. That was a hell of a performance by them. And the time you might have mentioned it on the reaction show, I can't remember, but the time of possession was incredible too. Vandy had that ball for 40 minutes, and or went over. And I'm sorry, Vandy had and Bama just I think they barely had it just under 18, so maybe they had it like 42 minutes, something like that. The time of possession was crazy in favor of Vanderbilt too. So, and I almost feel like maybe Alabama felt the same way too. Like, well, it's fine. We got all the talent. It's just like you said, it was almost that taking a week off kind of thing. You can't just nothing's a sure thing. That's for sure. In the SEC or in college football. But and I guess there is something to be said for those letdown games after a huge performance the week prior against Georgia and whatnot. But yeah, I don't think that I think Bama's going to exact some vengeance out on South Carolina. I don't think that they're really going to be able to do much, and I have them winning this one 38-10.
38-10. All right, gotcha. So covering. All right, moving on to Ole Miss. Ole Miss at LSU. The interesting part about Ole Miss right now is they've got, so their defense is playing really well, right? I think their defense might be elite. As far as I can tell, the signs are there of an elite defense. They allow 7.5 points per game. They lead the country in yards per rush, allowed at 1.8, rushing yards allowed 63, and sacks, 24. They have 14. There's 14 SEC players with at least 6 tackles for loss this season, and 5 of those are on Ole Miss. Yeah, right. Including obviously Walter Nolan, the headliner of that defensive line. So their offense scores at 44 points a game, 8.1 yards per play. LSU though has been like Baton Rouge, right? Is a tough environment, right? Tough environment. And so they're 1-7 on their last 8 road games versus AP ranked opponents. That's what makes this kind of an interesting game and intrigue, because I don't actually think LSU. I think LSU is a little bit overrated. If you're asking, like, I think Nussmeier, Nussmeier can play well, like he did. I thought he played well in the SC game. I thought he's played well most of the season, so he can sling it. He can throw the football. He can do a lot of things. He sometimes will make some goofy errors, but I wonder if they can establish the line of scrimmage, which is what's going to have to happen against Ole Miss. And I don't think that's going to happen. I have a feeling that Ole Miss is just too much in the trenches for these guys. And so I think they'll jump out early. But I kind of expected it to come down to the wire. But I think at the end of the day, Ole Miss's defense is what I actually like more than their offense. I think their offense is really good and explosive. But I think on this road test here, I just think it's going to be more about the defense really holding LSU in check. I view this defense here being able to hold them to a similar number as what USC did in Las Vegas. But I have them I have Ole Miss 34-24, so covering. And so the other thing is Ole Miss they're going to be in danger. I think, to me, they're a little off schedule now with that loss. So I think they're a little bit off schedule because they're going to be. There's a chance you got a couple, bunch of 2-loss teams in, and I don't think Ole Miss is. I don't think they're going to have a chance to have the resume to get in. Maybe if they beat if they beat Georgia, they could probably do it. But I don't think they're. I'm not seeing that one. So this is good. Ole Miss is suddenly a team that's in desperation mode. I don't think they can drop another game and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're kind of hanging on by a thread with that one loss, to Kentucky. Kind of, that wasn't one that like you said, nothing. Kentucky's played everybody tough, but I wouldn't consider that like a good loss per se, as far as like when it comes to the playoff committee or playoff rankings when you do that. But their defensive line, they're right up there with you best in the country. I couldn't believe that those tackle for loss stats. They lead the 63 and they're averaging over 10 and a half a game. That's incredible for tackle for loss. And and like all the defensive numbers you mentioned, those just I always think of Ole Miss and Lane as the offensive firepower and that defense is just out of this world. And Jackson, the swamp is it speaks for itself. Not so. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Death Valley.
Yeah, Death Valley. Thank you. Super hard place to play there. But Jackson's been, he's a veteran, and he's. I think that like you could. It won't be as tough a place for him. I know that's Happy Valley, Death Valley. Those are places I got to visit before everything's said and done. I want to go to a game in both those places. But I think Ole Miss will be too much in this one. I think it's going to be a close game. And like you said about Nussmeier, LSU's only given up 2 sacks this year. So it's kind of strength on strength with their defensive line against LSU's offensive line. again, another team that does not run the ball very well. And, LSU is 96 in the country, in rushing offense. And so a lot of times I think you get these, Ole Miss gets LSU in a third and long or in these passing situations, they get to pin their ears back and just and go after Nussmeier. But I think Jackson Dart, I think he's ready to, kind of get back up in the. I don't know if this will put him in the Heisman race per se, but I mean, he was one of my favorite quarterbacks to start the year, and I was kind of disappointed how he performed in that UK game. So I'm assuming that Lane, may have learned some things from that, and they'll be able to get him going and whatnot. But I think Ole Miss is going to win this one, and I think they're going to win 37-31. Or I'm sorry, 33.
37-33. All right, you got them covering. Ole Miss covering.
Yep.
Line's 3.5. Okay, gotcha. All right. Okay, last one for the SEC. Texas, the old Red River shootout. They call it the rivalry now? I guess is what it's called. But
yeah, right.
The old Red River shootout. Yeah. Same with
it's
Oregon.
It reminded me when you were talking about PBUs, and now I guess some people call it pass to fit. I'm like, it's always been pass breakups to me or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I can't keep up sometimes.
Change the terminology on us.
Yeah, so there's some of these games where I'm like, I get really deep into the stats, and then some of these games I don't feel the need to get so deep in the stats. This is another one of these games because the last few I could kind of, I looked through the stat sheet real quick, and there's certain things that jump off some stat sheets, and certain things that really, I already know. And I think Oklahoma is, I think we know what they are, and I think we know what Texas is. Now, this is a rivalry game, so sometimes you can throw all the stats out anyways, right? But I'm just going to say, unless Michael Hawkins Jr., unless for some reason they were able to go in the, and make him into whoever, I don't know, Avery Johnson or even Nico, he looked pretty pedestrian this last weekend, but put him to some super freshman, right? And transform him. He looked better, right? He looked better in the second half of the Tennessee game. Like he looked all right there, right? And so, I mean, that's really that's the test that you have to kind of look at here. They have a week off, and then I have my doubts about Oklahoma in general because Brent Venables seems to be in that same boat of, yeah, we've got a good defense, but our offense is not good. It's just not good. And you cannot win in modern day college football with an offense that ranks in the hundreds. You're just not. I just don't see that as being a feasible way, and I can't figure out why some of these coaches, have offenses like that are good defense. It reminds me of James Franklin and Penn State last year. In the last several years, like where they'd have this really good defense, or Iowa. Iowa always plays really good defense, right? But like really struggles on offense, and Oklahoma is that same type of team. They may surprise you and win some games because they play defense, and that defense will sometimes get a team that's maybe a little. Maybe it's a spread team that's not used to being, physically manhandled like Oklahoma plays a very physical brand, and then they can run the football. But you get into a game like this against a team that's extremely balanced, that has better athletes than you, and they've got two quarterbacks that could start anywhere in the country. I mean, either one of them can sling it. It's just like I just don't see this as Oklahoma's not going to be able to create enough havoc. They're not going to be able to move the football enough. And I think for Georgia, the Horns, they have Georgia next week. I think they'll be completely locked in for this game though, because they know it's a rivalry game. And so I just didn't see a situation where I felt like Oklahoma could win. I just don't. And this is probably one of the ones that always will come back and bite me because they're going to freaking figure it out. They're going to run the ball. Hawkins Jr. all of a sudden is just going to be throw for like 300. And I'm going to be back here talking about this on, Sunday. And we're going to be talking about it on Sunday and saying how stupid of a call this is. But I literally cannot see it with what I've seen from Oklahoma this far. So it would be completely out of left field if they won. And I've got Texas covering easily 38-14.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. I never thought about that. Oklahoma is the Iowa of SEC. They really are. I mean, they even the quarterback situation, and it's just I was struggling with the quarterback, and Oklahoma, same situation. And yeah, they, you know, that's a wonderful comparison. Texas is funny to me because, I mean, they're getting Quinn back. You know, that's exciting. So I'm sure they'll be pumped up for this one. Um, it's weird because on paper, and I know they're, you know, by all accounts and measures, you know, the number one team in the country right now. But I'm looking at their schedule and I'm like, man, you know, Michigan really wasn't. I mean, it was a great win at the time for sure, but you know, they obviously aren't what we thought they were going to be. They're not a top 10 team. I mean, I know that they'll probably get credit for beating a top 10 team at the time, but Michigan's not a top 10 team. Obviously, it might not even be a top 25 team, but it was a great defense and Quinn performed great. You know, wonderful there, no doubt about that. But then I mean, like Mississippi State, University of Louisiana Monroe, UTSA, Colorado State. So I'm like, I'm not fully bought in on Texas yet. You know, I mean, the numbers are beautiful. All the, you know, 10th in the country in passing offense, 7th in scoring offense, great defense. I mean, I think the defense is really good, but I don't think they're going to struggle in this one too much. I mean, I think that, you know, it'll be a good game for Quinn to get back in there because Oklahoma poses no threat on offense. So I don't think they'll ever be in jeopardy of losing this game. But next week is we're gonna. I mean, and I'm not taking anything away from that Michigan win, but I just didn't learn much from it. Now that we're a little bit further in the year and we know a little bit more about these teams, but Texas is going to win this one. I have them winning 38-17. But next week we find out about Texas.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're going to find out a lot about Texas, and I have my opinions about who's going to win that game, and you probably know. All right. On to the Big Ten, the B1G. We've got two games we're covering here, Penn State at USC, and then we'll get to the headliner. All right, so Penn State is – have they gotten over the hump? This is the game. This is the hump game for them. So in my opinion, they got a road game. USC is – I mean, okay, so USC loses to Minnesota. That wasn't really a great matchup for them anyways, and so – you know, kind of very, I mean, they're not big up front on the defensive line. You know, Minnesota's pretty big up front on the offensive line, and it just kind of went that way, right? There were some things, and I got to tell you, that's another pet peeve, the call on that one at the end of the game. I didn't see how they had the evidence to see, unless there was an angle, maybe I didn't see, but I mean, the ball came out. And right. I couldn't tell if the guy had it over or not from the angles that they were showing. Apparently they you know, they knew, but I mean, that was called not a touchdown. So I didn't see how they overruled that, but I mean, I guess they did. So, but either way, USC, if you would have, you know, said, I think a lot of people might have said they'd have two losses at this point. They wouldn't have thought, though, you wouldn't have thought Minnesota was going to be one of them. Right. And this USC team is different from the past USC teams that have kind of folded. Now, I know Lincoln Riley's his seat's starting to warm up. And so, you know, whether we want to say that or not, I had said it before. I said I could see him being gone if they go like 7-5 or something, you know, because, I mean, you've added DeAnton Lynn now to you've got a good defense. Now it's your offense that's not able to get the job done in these big games. So what's going on there exactly? And I've read some comments from USC fans. They're crazy, you know, like Alabama fans, but they're like, you know what, we're paying $10 million for that. Like for what, you know, for what? And so I still think USC is really good. I picked them to be an outsider to sneak into the playoffs, and they're going to have to be perfect from here on out, but they don't have a losable game on their schedule until Notre Dame after this one. So they really don't. They're going to be a favorite in every game. If they can get past this game, I think they could be a 2-loss team that were to sneak in, because that would mean that they would have wins against LSU, and they would have a win against Penn State, and then they would have a win against Notre Dame. So I can see that they still have a path. So fans of Troy, like, chill out. Like, it's gonna be all right. You guys win this game, and you're gonna forget all about last week. It's going to be an afterthought, and they're like I said, they're going to be favored probably in every game. You know, that Rutgers game, I can't remember, is that Rutgers at home or if it's away? That'll probably that's going to be a really good game, I'm sure. People are, yeah. So I mean, but at the end of the day, I think they still have a road to the playoffs. Oh, so yeah, I put that down. So they're at Maryland. They got Rutgers at home. They're at UW Washington, which can be a tricky game, but they should win that game. They've got Nebraska at home, UCLA and Westwood. That's a bye week for them. And then, because I think UCLA is just not good at all. And then they get Notre Dame at home. So that's a very manageable schedule. That is a very manageable schedule and winnable schedule for these guys. If they went out, like I said, they'd beaten Penn State, LSU, and Notre Dame. So that's a pretty good resume. So for USC fans, just chill out, like watch this game. Now, to the actual game itself, Penn State comes in with a lot of confidence. They're one of the most balanced teams in the country, which is weird to say. Their offensive power rank is 13th. Defense is second. This is according to PFF. They give up a stingy 11.4 per game, and they score 34.4. I mean, they really went in and did a number in West Virginia. That was impressive. Other than that, though, has Penn State really had a super impressive win? I guess you could say kind of that 21-7 Illinois, but that was a battle all the way. I mean, that was that game was they had to battle for that one, and that I'm not sure if that's you give credit to Illinois for being good, or if you look at I'm not sure how to look at that game exactly yet, but USC scores 30.8 points per game, and they give up 18.4. So they're no scrubs there. They rank 20th in passing offense, and they about 292 yards a game. Now, Penn State's passing defense is 11th, and they're only giving up 157. The rushing offense for USC 78th. They about 149 yards per game, and it's kind of weird because they kind of get it in spurt. They're either like hot for a series, or they're just like not. It's like it's kind of a weird. I can't figure USC's run game. It's not very consistent. Is what I see. So and it's going to need to be because Penn State's rushing defense is fourth. They give up 76 yards per game. Their offense, Penn State likes to run the ball 218 yards, and USC's run defense, that's the weak spot, right, of 87. So this is that like strength on what your weakness is. And so there's a couple ways that game can break. If Penn State can run the ball successfully, this is going to be a long day for USC because they're not going to be able to get that offense on the field. Now, I think, though, Penn State they've got an advantage everywhere. The only thing I see is that the passing offense, right? I think that USC is really good at throwing the football, and they've got guys everywhere. As you know, they've got playmakers, and Penn State hasn't. Now, they haven't seen these type of playmakers yet, not this year, and they're going to be in the Coliseum, and the weather's going to be warm out there. I don't know what it is right now. What is the weather out east right now? I don't have no idea what it is.
We're starting to hit some fall weather. It's like 70, right around 70, 72.
Yeah, but it's not SoCal weather. Right. It's not going to be that. It's exactly right. But so everything statistically though really heads Penn State's way. But I have to go with my gut on this one, and I just think that USC. I think they're going to probably play their best game of the season. It's just there's a lot of hype for them. They're going to have a ton of recruits. There's a ton of electricity there. I think you looked at how they played in that second half of the Wisconsin game, and that's how good a USC team can play. And I expect to see that version of USC. I think Miller Moss is really good. He's better at home than he is on the road, but I think he's really good. I think he's actually I really think he's elite at avoiding a sack and remaining a passer. And I think he's going to have to do that because Penn State can get after it for sure. But I'm expecting a USC outright win, 27-24. So, yeah, it was hard to come to that conclusion for me. It was really that was another difficult one to pick.
You laid it out great. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's for damn sure. I was really confused with USC last week. Like Zachariah Branch only getting 3 catches for 10 yards. I mean, that kid's he'd be a starter obviously on any team. Your Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Oregon, all this. I mean, like that kid needs to feed him the ball. I mean, he's so fast. So I couldn't believe that Lincoln Riley, the offensive genius that he is, that they weren't able to, get him more run. That's kind of crazy. But and Miller Moss, man, I didn't really know much about him, and then he came out the gates in that LSU game, and I was like, man, who is this guy? I mean, I didn't do enough homework on him, and he really blew me away, impressed me. And then it kind of like he just hasn't been able to achieve, like, I feel like that type of performance that he had against LSU the first game of the year, and it's almost like he's been chasing that and just hasn't been able to get there. Maybe this is the game that he does it. Penn State, I'm sure they're going to get Nicholas Singleton back this week. He didn't play in the UCLA game last week, and him and Katron Allen, they're man, that's a formidable two-headed monster in that rushing attack. And Drew Aller, man, he's been the biggest difference between the Penn State years of past or the Penn State teams of past and what they are this year. I think that is the biggest difference maker. And that maybe is for the first time in a long time gives me a little bit of concern about Penn State. Like maybe they're, because it's always been a quarterback making a Trace McSorley or Sean Clifford and these quarterbacks that they have that just not near to the level of what Drew Aller was, but they would all make and even with Drew Aller last year, just boneheaded play or a mistake at the most inopportune time and all the James Franklin rumors and about him not being able to win a big game would come to surface again, and it's kind of that story just keeps being told. But this year he's only thrown one. Drew Aller's only thrown one interception. He's probably the best right now. He might be the best quarterback in the Big Ten statistically. I mean, like he's taking care of the football. He's his pass efficiency rating is off the chart, number one. And I mean, so this Penn State offense, it's not flashy, but it's a Big Ten, your classic traditional Big Ten offense that they're gonna run the ball to set up the pass, and which is a beautiful a thing to have on third downs when you have two guys that that can go get those third downs and convert these third downs for you, keep your offense out on the field and maintain that ball, keep time of possession, and so the Penn State has a lot going for them. Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I mean, Happy Valley to the Coliseum. That's a trek, man. That's a trek. I've been getting into. I listened to a Minutes to Sports podcast, and they always have a tracker on the equipment because the equipment can't be flown out there. So like when Stanford's playing Clemson or when Stanford's playing Syracuse, they got to bust all that equipment out from one coast to the other. I mean, these are like 48-hour, 2-day trips in semi trucks. I feel terrible for those guys. It's kind of crazy. But I think with Penn State's defense, and I think with their ability to, again, I'm just such a fan of controlling the clock, the line of scrimmage, and Abdul Carter. I think he's a monster on Penn State, the defensive end for Penn State on rushing the passer, rushing Miller Moss, and I mean. And I don't want to take anything away from USC's defense because that's one of the most confounding things about this USC team is because it's always been they haven't had a defense, and now this year they have a defense, and Lincoln Riley still hasn't. Just I don't know. There's two losses to be. The Michigan game, obviously we went over that one, beat that horse as much as we could. But yeah, and you make great points about the Minnesota one, but I still feel like they had all the athletes and they didn't execute and I'm starting to wonder about, Lincoln Riley, I as far as, and like you said, his seat has to be simmering a little bit, I don't know if it's Helton over there, or if it's Lincoln Riley, I don't, but anyway, I think that Penn State ends up winning this one. I think it'll be a good game, but I have them winning 31-23.
31-23.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Penn State covers. Okay. That leaves us with our headliner. Last thing I'll say about Lincoln Riley, I think he's a really good coach, and I think, obviously, he had Alex Grinch with him at Oklahoma, and then brought him over to USC, and I think he's, they were friends, and he, just was I can't blame the guy for being a good friend. Maybe held on to him for too long. But I would like to see him at least get one more year with D'Anton. I don't know if D'Anton Lynn's going to be there for another year. I probably won't actually, but with another, I'm sure they can find another good defensive coordinator now that they know what that is. And I'd like to see him because his offenses are fun. They evolve. Usually they evolve, and it'll be interesting to see if he can. They have a good recruiting class coming in, and so it'll be interesting to see if they can steady the ship there and. Not be too trigger happy if they have a below expectation season. I think, for me, my expectations were pretty high of them, but for fans, they really probably realistically shouldn't be thinking that they were a playoff team this year. Probably next year or the year after. Give them some run. So, all right, let's get to Ohio State at Oregon. The Buckeyes are tripping out to Eugene. Yeah. Chip Kelly, there's so many storylines that you can put out here. There's so much talent on the field, so much good coaching. I mean, think you've got Jim Knowles, you got Will Stein versus Jim Knowles, you got Chip Kelly versus Tosh Lupoy, you've got Lanning versus Day. You've got this is like all-star stuff here as far as like football coaches, and then you got football players. But Ohio State, to me, this is the first time I've dug deep into their numbers, and their numbers are scary. They are absolutely scary on paper. Number one scoring D at 6.8 yards per game. Number one defense in yards per game at 202.4. Number one defense in yards per play at 3.61. Number 13 defense pass against the pass at 142. Number 14 in third down conversions. And this might be the scariest stat of all of them is that, and you look at who they played, and you say their opponents are scoring only 60% of the time that they're in the freaking red zone against these guys. 40% they're coming out with 0 points. That is going to, I have a feeling that's going to factor into this game. Scoring offense, you go, okay, like they're really good at defense. Well, they're really good at offense too. Fourth in scoring offense at 46. Total offense, 9th at 510 yards. Rushing offense, 14th. Passing, 13th. Passing yards per game, they're 23rd. Sorry, so those were yards per play for passing. They were 13th, and rushing yards they were 14th. And then red zone, they're 100% in scoring in the red zone. And I'm like, dude, where's the weakness? Is what like I'm looking at this like, where's the weakness on paper? And I'm sure you're going to be able to point that out, but I still haven't been able to find it. I look at Oregon and they're 21st scoring defense, 17 points per game. They're 10th in yards per game, 18th in yards per play, 24th versus the run. They are 48th in yards per play against the run. Now they do get a little asterisk because they've played against Ashton Jonty.
Right. Yeah. We got to give them a little pass for that. Some of those yards.
You give them a little pass for that. I looked at Boise State's offense. Boise State's offense number 3 in the country right now. So it's like they've seen a good offense. We know that. They've not seen a defense anywhere close to what they're about to see. But 32nd in scoring, 67th in rushing yards per game, and then 19 in passing. So I've got a little like bad on good and good on good. So Oregon ranks number 93 in red zone efficiency. That is not good when you're playing against Ohio State, their defense that has a 40% stop rate. So a 40%, like you get through a pick 6 against UCLA and 2 of them against Michigan State. I am like, what are you going to do against Ohio State? Oregon ranks 105th in defensive red zone efficiency. So you get in the red zone, you're scoring. And Ohio State's number 1 because they're 21 of 21 in efficiency for red zone. Ohio State ranks number 10 in offense for third down conversions. Oregon ranks number 24 on defense for holding third down conversions. So that's kind of good on good. Those are both good numbers. Ohio State ranks their defense ranks number 14 in defensive preventing third down conversions, and Oregon ranks 18th in getting third down conversions. So that's the good on good. So that was the bad on good first, the good on good. Now, one really bad on good is Ohio State is +4 in turnover margin. Oregon is -1. And like I said, they had a 5-quarter stretch where they gave up the ball 3 times in the red zone, 0 points. So I mentioned, so let's a little bit about the Jimmies and Joes. Will Howard versus Dillon Gabriel. So when they're a clean pocket, Howard's better at 132.8. Gabriel's 112.6. Pressure. This is the bad. This is the only bad that I could really find is Will Howard's 36.5 under pressure. So you got to get pressure if you're Oregon. And Dillon Gabriel's 118 passer rating under pressure. That's incredible. That's one of the highest ones we've seen. Big time throw percentage, Will Howard 2.89 on both turnover worthy plays and big time throws. So he kind of levels himself out there. Dillon Gabriel is 3.45 for big time throws and 1.97 on turnover worthy plays, which he's and that has gone up a lot because he was in the below 1 all the way up until the last 2 weeks. Which Dillon Gabriel shows up, I think, and which Will Howard shows up is going to go a long ways in determining how this game goes. We know the defensives can both get after it. Obviously, this is like these teams are evenly matched in a lot of ways, but the result has been overwhelmingly better statistically, I think, for Ohio State as I look at the game. We got a lot of good matchups in here. Oregon hasn't played a clean game except for against Oregon State. And I'll let you speak on Ohio State on what games you felt were clean and what games were not clean. But I felt for Oregon, I can speak on because I've watched every single one of their games, and Oregon State was a clean game, and they've had a couple games that were almost clean, but they made a couple bonehead mistakes. But Michigan State's one of them. They played really good defense, really smothering defense against Michigan State. They looked really good. That's the only common opponent they've had, and they beat them kind of a similar way. Ohio State really had their way probably a little bit more with them, and but Oregon felt like they'd never felt like that game was out of control. They ended up, they were up 31-0 at one point, and then, before Michigan State scored. Now, you've got Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden, Evan Stewart, Jordan James, but in the Ohio State, you've got Downs and you've got Burke, and they don't have it, dude. They don't have a defensive back that's under 6 foot and rangy. It's like their DBs are like there's freaking some serious DBs that Ohio State has there, and I wonder, can the defense hold up? Jabbar Muhammad, Nico Reed, you've got Carnell Tate, you've got Jeremiah Smith. Those are your matchups. You got Tysheem Johnson on Emeka Egbuka. What gives there, right? This is going to be like really good on good for player wise. Like, I'm really excited to see a lot of these matchups here, especially in the secondary one-on-one. So I have questions on how are you going to stop Henderson and Judkins? I don't actually know. So I see this game. There's so many outcomes. This game has so many outcomes in my head. Oregon's at Autzen, comfortable. I mean, the crowd it's loud, it's rocking. It is a different type of place, than a lot of places around the country. Especially, we've seen teams just fold there late. I don't think Ohio State's that team. You've got Chip Kelly, who's going to know how to get those guys ready. Ohio State hasn't. The one thing is, I'll say they haven't been tested on the road like this. Not in an environment like this. This is going to be the first time they've seen that this season, but that doesn't, they've seen other stuff. They play in the Big Ten. They've seen a lot of these kids have seen road games like that. They've played against an Iowa defense that was really good as recently as last week. And so, Oregon's a really good defense. We'll see how that goes. Oregon's seen Boise State. I mentioned that. But they haven't seen a defense. They've seen an offense that's really good. They haven't seen any receivers like they're about to see, and they definitely have not seen a defense like the one that they're about to see. The last time that Oregon and Ohio State played was at the Shoe. We were at that game.
Good one.
That was my birthday, by the way. It was on my birthday, and that was a great birthday present for me. And so I appreciate you guys being such good hosts on that one. But Ohio State, to me, they look better on paper. The eye test, they look like the more complete team. I love Oregon. Everybody knows that. But this is business here. And to me, Oregon they shoot themselves in the foot too often for me to know. And Dylan Gabriel hasn't shown that he's got that consistency that Bo Nix had last year. And so, I'm going to take Ohio State to cover 34-27. They're going to go into Autzen and they're going to get the win.
Man, it is amazing to me how similar these teams are. I've watched both teams all year, but I haven't put the numbers side by side. And man, I think you even mentioned it, in so many areas, these teams, they're not separated by much at all. And I think that even goes to the quarterback. Even the quarterback, they're kind of similar as far as I was looking at their average depth of throw, and I think Will Howard's is 7.4, and Dylan Gabriel's average depth of throw is 6.8. So they both kind of run their offenses similarly around the same way. And and I was so impressed with Oregon's running game. Last week when we kind of mentioned when they were playing MSU, I thought that might be one of the things they want to work on, because it didn't look like it was. I guess I thought it could be better, and boy, was it better. Jordan James, that's the running back's name, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he blew my mind. That kid looked so fast last week, and I was thoroughly impressed. And that game could have been right. They should have been up 5 or 6 touchdowns against.
It really should have been.
That game was this close from just being a godly score for MSU. They made a couple. That was the only game, and you might have covered it in the reaction show, but I think I've ever seen in my life where both teams turned the ball over inside the 2-yard line, like getting ready to score just because they did it. And then Oregon did it to all the other side. I've never seen that before. But, you can go through all the passing offense numbers. And I like looking at those when, in I guess, some of the games like we had just previewed. In a game like this, I mean, this is like so much good on good. Two juggernauts, and I think the numbers you were kind of hitting on are the ones that I think are going to be the difference in this game. I think it's going to be third down. I think it's going to be third down defense. I think it's going to be red zone, scoring in the red zone. I think it's going to be red zone defense. And then, barring any crazy turnovers or whatnot. But and Will Howard always has this like bonehead throw. He did against Iowa, and it's in the numbers that you brought up. It's when he gets pressured. It's almost when he gets blitzed. Then when he gets blitzed, he knows where to go with the ball. He sees and he finds the open guy. But it's when he gets pressured by just a 4-man rush and everybody's covered and he kind of just I don't know, he kind of panics. Seems like he panics maybe, and he's the last couple of games he's made a bonehead throw. The good news for Ohio State is I think that Iowa was their cleanest game of the year. I think that was their best win. I know maybe it didn't feel like it during the game because it was like 7-0 for a while, but it never felt, I don't know, crazy out of hand or nothing like that. It just felt like it was a methodical game. Iowa's running the ball. They're trying to, but they weren't really even to do with the one thing that they were good at, which is rushing the ball. And I've been so worried talked about the linebackers all year. And Sonny Styles finally, that was the kind of game where he showed up and he really impressed me. That was the best game by far. He used to be a safety last year in Jim Knowles' defense. He was playing with 3 safeties. He got kind of too big to play safety. He's 6'4", 230, 235, and he so they moved him down to linebacker, and he's still kind of like he kind of is like reading and then reacting to play maybe a second too long, almost like he has that time as a safety, I guess, to where this game he was able to just find the ball carrier and tackle him, and he made a lot of great plays, and I thought he by far the best game. I think Oregon is going to try to confuse him. I think when like Urban Meyer says he said when he was on offense they try to find the fish on defense, and Sonny might be the fish. I don't know, but I think that if I'm Oregon, I'm going to try to attack him. Cody Simon, our middle linebacker, he's a great linebacker, 5th-year senior. I think that if I was going to go after anybody, I'd try to go after Sonny and confuse him. And then as far as like the DBs, as you mentioned, like Latham Ransom, our safety, he's been he's been playing. He might be our best player on defense right now. And then Caleb Downs, freshman All-American last year at Bama, he's come in and he's playing wonderful. Denzel Burke, you don't even hear about Denzel this year. I haven't heard much about him, and that's a good thing when you're a defensive back, obviously, because nobody's going at you. He's got one interception, he might have 2, but he's been making plays when he's needed to. And instead of a safety, when they moved Sonny Styles down on defense to linebacker, they put in our nickelback Jordan Hancock as like that kind of safety spot. It's more like a DB safety, but Jordan's been playing great. He's not afraid to come up, stick his head in there, make the tackle, which is not, you don't always see that with DBs, but he kind of DB, but he plays like a quarterback, but he's playing like a safety. The one guy I would go after if I was Oregon is Davison Igbinosa. He gets a little handsy, and Iowa went after him a lot last week. And, he's kind of weird. He plays off a little too much. And I don't know if that's Jim Knowles telling him to do that or if or he's trying to like bait the quarterback into doing or into throwing to his guy. But the thing is like he hasn't, he's baiting him, but he's not, they're making the play and they're getting the first down. And so he hasn't been able to, I think he's more of a press guy. He needs to be up there, and he's got the speed to recover from it if he happens, the guy or the receiver happens to get by him or whatnot. But they've had him play off a lot. So but that's the one guy. If I'm Oregon, that's who I'm trying to get matchups with Tez, and I'm probably going to try to go after him as well as Sonny Styles. Will Howard, for maybe his the one deficiency in his game, actually maybe 2 if you count not throwing well under pressure, is that he doesn't throw the ball over 20 yards very well at all. But it's weird because from the 11 to 19 yard throws, the intermediate throws, he's really good. I think he's like 71% or right at 70%, maybe just under 69. But so he's confident in making those throws, but he just does not throw a deep ball very well. And I guess that's okay because Jeremiah Smith, you got him out there, and so he can make up for some of the deficiencies in Will Howard's not inability to throw the ball deep. But I don't necessarily. The offense has been, you went over the numbers. chugging right along, even without that element to the game. And so I don't see any reason to try to add it at this point. I mean, I think they can be successful without it. I hope that, like you had mentioned that you mentioned a couple times that Oregon hadn't seen a defense like this one. Well, I think that the same goes with this defense hasn't seen an offense like Oregon's, that's for sure, because, the numbers are probably padded a little bit by the fact that, Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, I mean, missed MSU, Aiden Childs wasn't very good at quarterback, and then Iowa does not have an offense either. So I don't want to take anything away from their defense, because I think they have a really good defense. And I just think that it's almost like what I was saying about Texas. I just don't know how good they are yet, because I don't, this is the test we've all been waiting for to see how really good are they. Two guys that, we mentioned all the other spots, but Jack Sawyer and JTT, they've finally been able to get after quarterback. Jack had 2 sacks last week, and they've kind of unleashed the defensive ends a little bit. And Tyleek Williams in the middle, he's really good. He's a really good defensive tackle, and hopefully he can stay healthy. He's sat out a couple of games this year, so he played last week. I'm sorry, he played last week. He sat out a couple of games this year so far. He didn't play, I think, in the Western Michigan and the Marshall game, Marshall game and the MSU game. He didn't play in those, but he was back for Iowa, so we were happy about that. But Oregon with is it? I'll say his name. Ugalele, is that how you say it?
Ugalele.
Yeah.
Yep.
DJ's brother or whatever. I had him on my radar for a long time when he was coming out of high school, and OSU just wasn't able to win that battle. And he's a stud. Gosh, and talking about Ohio State's defensive line, Oregon's got a really good get after the quarterback defensive line as well. So I think Josh Fire and Simmons are 2 tackles. They're gonna have to bring their A game. They're Josh Fire, on the right side. He's kind of maybe the weakest link on our line. The right side would be. So that's going to be something to have to watch and keep an eye on. But I really think circling back to the numbers I was wanting to get at is I think this game was going to come down to the red zone. I think Ohio State 21 trips, 20 touchdowns, 1 field goal, 100% there. I think that that's always been the struggle with, and it's been so nice having Chip Kelly, because when Ryan Day was calling the plays, it would seem like every time we got in the red zone, our offense just stalled. They couldn't do anything, and settling for field goals, or just couldn't even pick up a 3rd and 2, or didn't go for it and come away with no points. It was so frustrating, and it's nice that Ryan could be the head coach and just manage, be the CEO of the team. And Chip has made such a world of difference. And I hate to keep reiterating that and bringing that up, but it's just, it's night and day. It really is for Ohio State fans with this offense. I think that might be where the game is won again, unless there's some kind of crazy turnover. And so I have Ohio State winning this one 33-28. We were right next to each other.
That's why you scoffed when I made that. When I made my prediction, it was like we're kind of in sync. I think they're like, we're in lockstep there. Yeah, this is going to be a really good football game. I'm really excited to watch it. So there you have it. You've got so we were pretty much identical on that one there. We have both have Ohio State covering. So I'm really excited. I mean, this is a really great weekend of football. So clear your calendars for Saturday. Make all the arrangements and enjoy. But there's such a good slate of games coming up. So we've been spoiled already. And I think was there another one Friday? Somebody. Oh wait, no, maybe that was just like maybe it was Arizona State playing somebody. I can't remember. There was a game I was telling myself I was going to watch Friday. I can't remember which one it is though. I'll have to go back and check. But awesome, Joe. Thank you so much for joining us. What a great episode. Our predictions are the hardest thing in the world trying to call college football. So we'll see you on Sunday for the reaction show. And so for Sports Idol Nation, I'm Josh Rodriguez. Sports is in our DNA. Hope it's in yours too.